Good evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Inspiration webinar. Inspiration Software is the embroidery software line of G7 Solutions and designs in machine embroidery. Our Inspiration line includes My Block Pacer, My Quilt Embellisher, Perfect Embroidery Pro, Perfect Stitch Viewer, Word Art and Stitches, and My Quilt Planner. Tonight's webinar is the ABCs of artwork and backdrops. We have a wonderful team tonight assisting us, Nancy R. and Dory N. And I would like to have you join with us, the inspiration consultant of our artistic dreams, Tamara Evans.
Thank you, Dory. Before we get started in this webinar, I'm really excited about the news you told me earlier today, and what you have up on your screen right now, our new community that will be replacing the forum. Is that correct?
Yes, it will, due to popular demand.
Okay, so what do we gain with the community that we didn't have in the forum?
Well, first of all, we have a very pleasant, clean face on this. We have our FAQs here on the left, and we have the community area, which enter here by clicking, and you, of course, have all of your software all categorized. You can
That's
enter.
Beautiful.
It is. It's nice and clean. You can just add in one of your posts. You can put in a post at any time just by clicking the word post, and you can show them all. You've got all your topics, and we'll always let you know what is the most sought after questions. We will put that in the front. Okay?
That is great. And so it looks to me like you've moved all of the stuff that was in the forum over here. So it's already populated with tons of information.
Yes, Nancy roughly was so sweet. She spent hours putting all the stuff from the forum over into this new format for us.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. This looks awesome. It looks much simpler to follow. So when they come into this new community, they have to create a new login and password? Is that?
Yes, they will. And that will be the same one that they can use for help ticket by just submitting up at the top here where my finger is. You can just submit a ticket up here. And on some of the screens, the ticket will be over on the left underneath the word topics. And we will take care of you toot sweet. Okay?
All right. That looks great. Thanks, Dory. And that'll be out sometime tomorrow. So go on and check out your new community at your earliest opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the hard work.
There you go. Over to you. Not yet. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm going to bring up, we're actually going to discuss the backdrops and artwork in all three quilting programs this evening. I'm going to start with my quilt embellisher. And then we'll show,
Could you unplug from your, you're getting your warbling. So unplug. There you go. Lovely.
Okay, good. All right, so we will go through each program and you can see how they work. They're very similar in their capabilities. It's just that some have more capabilities than others, but they're the same way. So we'll start with my quilt embellisher and backdrops. With a backdrop is a picture. And if you come over here to your backdrop tool, you can select a backdrop from here. You can also click on the file icon up at the top and load a backdrop from there. It works the same way regardless of which one you choose. This dialog box comes up and it defaults to your images folder. That images folder is in your C drive under Dime Images. Now, I tend to keep all of mine there so I don't have to go hunt around, but every now and then I may have to go look out on a memory stick that I have in, or USB drive, or somewhere else in my computer. But I try and keep most of them in here. And it does come populated, not with all of these. A lot of these I've added, but it comes populated with a couple of different folders. There's bitmaps here and up at the top that have more images in them that were loaded ahead of time. And you may have some of the images that I have on mine right now. I tend to find things that I like, pictures, or I can take a photograph or scan something. What the images, the backdrops are simply images. They are just a picture. They don't have any real properties except size. Okay, so let's take this one right here, this star image, and I'm going to select it and open it. Now, it comes up on my screen, and this would be one I would have taken a photograph of because it's crooked, but that's okay. We don't have to go through a lot of trouble in editing photos or images because we have the capability of doing it right here on the screen. So this is in the background. See, if I click on it, it really doesn't do anything. If I select my backdrop, now you can see it's put my 4 corners on there of my nodes. If I wanted to rotate it, I could and try and get it straight, but obviously I'm not very good at that. So here's the easiest way to do it. You're going to come over here to your backdrop tool on the left-hand side again and click on the arrow that's pointing to the right underneath it, and it says define horizon. That means it wants you to tell it what should be a straight line. So I'm clicking on this corner up here, a straight horizontal line, okay, horizon, horizontal, and then I'll drag it to the other side and let go, and it straightens it right up for me. Now I could have done that, you know, from this point to this point, any horizontal line on there. Now we can look by clicking on our grid over here on the left-hand side, right under the 3D, and it will put our grid up here for me. I can tell by looking now that that really is straight. You know, it appears to be. At least in eyeballing it, it looks really good. So, and you see also with the backdrop, when you select the grid is on top of the image. This is a way you can always tell if it's a backdrop or if it's artwork, because when you select grid with artwork, the artwork is on top of the grid. This is a backdrop, so it is underneath the grid. To kind of help you remember, it's like looking through a window at something to trace. So here's your window that you're looking at this particular quilt block. Now, the other thing we need to do with this block, besides straightening it up, is to give it a size. Now, over here in my backdrop properties on the upper right-hand side, you can see that it says the width is 9.1 inches and the height is 9.03 inches. That is measuring from corner to corner here. That's the area that includes some white space around it. If we're going to design stuff to put on this block, we need that to be the exact size of the block. Otherwise, our quilting's not going to fit on it, or our design, whatever we decide to decorate it with, won't fit. So we need to do one more thing to this backdrop. We'll come back over to the backdrop tool and click that arrow that goes to the right, and this time we'll define the scale. Now there's another way you can get to these two that I just noticed lately. If I right click, because with all of our software programs, if you have something selected and you right click, it will tell you everything you can do with whatever it is you have selected. So all I can do with a backdrop is find the horizon and find the scale. Or I can come over to my properties box and change it right over here. So let's define the scale or the size of it. And you'll notice here was our original horizontal line there, but we're not worried about that. I can pick any 2 points measure. I can go from this side, and I'm going to click and drag to the opposite point right here, let go, and it says that is exactly 8 inches. Well, my block didn't come out exactly 8 inches. I pulled it from my potholder pile, so, you know, those ones that don't come out right because you cut them wrong or something. So I'm going to say this one is really 6.75 inches and click OK. Now, you'll notice over here the size in our backdrop properties changed, but it's still referring to the total size of the backdrop, which includes that white space. The scale here is at 100%. So I'm looking at, I want it to be 1:1. Rotation, if I wanted to rotate it a certain number of degrees, I could. If I want to do it 90 or 180, those are buttons for me just to have fewer clicks. And I can also adjust the lightness of the background. If I drag this over and click apply right here, then it makes my backdrop lighter. So it's a little fainter, which you may want to do sometimes just depending on what you're dealing with. If you bring it all the way over, of course, you can't see it at all. But I kind of like it on the darker side so I can tell what's going on. Now you'll notice too that the X in the center here, because that's the center of the whole image, is not in the center of my screen. It is with the white in it, but not. I can adjust this just a little bit so that, and to do fine adjustments, hold down your control key and use your arrow keys, and you can do really fine adjustments with that. So if you want to get that perfectly centered on there, you can. If not, don't worry about it. Okay, so that is a backdrop. Let's look at another backdrop. I'm going to open a new file. And let's turn our grid off and open up our backdrop tool. And let's see what other backdrops we may have on here. How about one with a design on it? Like, this fleur-de-lis. Okay, I will click on that and click open. And you notice it just says all backdrop files. The files that it will read are all images, not artwork. Those are raster images. And I know that Catherine Artinas talks a lot about raster versus vector when she talks about artwork. These are these are pixelated images, which you'll be able to see pretty clearly with this one. When I bring it in, if you scroll way in, you see how the color is not solid and it's pixelated. That's an image. That's not true artwork. Okay, it's, if I turn my grid on, it's in the background. As you can see here, it's not above the grid. So I can turn that off if I don't want to look at it. But the other types of raster images are things like a JPEG, BMP, PNG files. All of those are bitmapped images. They're pixelated. Raster images you can scale, and they don't lose their integrity. This one, if I scaled it up a lot, let's say we're going to be crazy here, and I'm going to change that width to, let's make it 36. So we're scaling it up almost 700%. And it will adjust the height accordingly. You do not have an override to adjust that separately. It will keep it proportional. So let's apply that. And when we do, we can see that now that's very pixelated in there. If I zoom in more, you can even see more, and there's different colors. But that is a JPEG image. Let's go up and use our undo button up here and take it back to the size it was. Now, the quick way, here's just a reminder to fill your screen with whatever is on the design page, is to right-click on your ruler and click Center Origin. But you know what? That doesn't work with artwork. So we will just, I'm using my mouse to scroll in. You could use your percentages up here and your view percent, zoom in, zoom out to fit or selection on the top. But now that we have that in full screen, let's look at a couple of things that we can do with backdrops. We can turn backdrops into artwork very simply. We could take and click on our artwork tool up here and select the pen. Now you notice over on the right-hand side in our properties box, I have fill checked on mine. You can uncheck it. It's just as to whether you're going to see the color after you draw it or not, or it's just going to be an outline. And the commands, it's just one color, so there's not a lot to do with the commands there. We're going to create artwork here, and I can simply, well, before we do that, let me show you. I'm going to use the pen and draw this. So I can come in and click, and I can hold the control key down to make some curved images. And this is just simple, or curved lines. This is just simple draw, but this can get pretty tedious. When I right click, there it filled in that part that I drew. I could draw around that whole thing, but frankly, I don't enjoy that. And this is a very clean image. So I'm just going to delete this part that I just did. I'm going back to select my artwork. Only this time I'm going to select my magic wand. Now, with the magic wand, it's only available when you have a backdrop. That's the only time the magic wand shows up. You have to have something to create artwork from, just kind of like in Cinderella. She didn't create that coach and those 4 horses out of nothing. She used rats and a pumpkin. So we need a backdrop here to create what we want. So if I right or left click on my artwork, I just drew that. Now I could take a closer look at it and go, well, some of those lines are not exactly perfect, but depending on what size it is and what size your picture is going to be, will depend on how much or what size final item it will be, whether this, for instance, an applique or what, or fill stitches will depend on how much detail I want to get into. I can select the shape tool that's right over here on the right side, I'm sorry, the left side underneath our selection tool, and it shows me all of the points that it put in to create that. Now, because this is artwork now, and we can tell that by looking at our sequence view, we've created artwork. We didn't have anything before. Now we have artwork. If I select it, click on my shape tool again, I could go in and adjust these points, and you can delete some or move them if you want it to be a little bit sharper. And we'll get into more detail about editing artwork in a later webinar. I just wanted to show you what you could do with it. So if you bring up clear artwork, it works very well. On the other hand, if we go back to our first design and I say, oh, I want to make this into a quilt block that I could actually stitch. I come up and select my artwork. It's still filled. I've set that as my default. Select my magic wand. Let's pick orange for my color. I just come down to the bottom and right click to change my color. And I'm going to click right here. That is not a solid line. Everywhere that it saw the distinction between the darker gold dots and the lighter background, it left a hole. So in that case, I would probably want to use my pen and draw it, or come up and select a diamond shape, because a diamond, when I draw that, oops, get off of my artwork or my magic wand, I can draw a diamond, and then I'm going to select it and move it over here, lining up that one point here in the corner, go to my shape tool and pull this one over here to the center and this one over here. Because it's got 4 points, you could do the same with the square, but this is already on point, if you will. So it makes it very easy to create that artwork. Now on the side ones here, I would use a triangle shape to do those. So you can take a backdrop that is less than clear, less than clean, and make artwork from it. I do that a lot of times with maybe Pinterest and go, gee, I wonder what that would look like, and pull it up as a backdrop and create my artwork from the image that's behind it. So Dory, do you have any questions so far with backdrops?
No, other than we have hesitation and we have warbling.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That is quite all right. If you'll shake, rattle, and roll your connection, see if maybe that's what the problem is.
Yeah, I'm going to change my port real quick.
Okay. I think if she was going to do this correctly, she would have used UT orange, not orange.
Okay, am I back? Is that better?
Yes, wrong color orange, mind you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, for you Austin people, it's not burnt orange, but I'm using the defaults in the software.
Yes.
Okay, so let me show you one other thing with a backdrop and artwork that I use a lot in my Quilt Embellisher.
Before you do that, can we sweet talk you into, because there was hesitation with what you just did, could you go over that just quickly one more time, please?
Sure, sure.
Showing the magic wand and going from one segment to the other, please.
Yes. Okay. My backdrop is up. I'm going to select my artwork. Okay. So when I click on my magic wand, and it's only available when I have a backdrop, you got to have something to change, something to copy. And I click, I'm going to change this to, sorry, down here at the bottom, we'll pick up this blue. And I'm going to click on this area here, and let's see how clear that one comes out. Not at all, because it's so similar in tones in some cases, it just looks awful. I can dismiss the backdrop over here on the left-hand side so you can see just how, how really bad that is. So let's bring our backdrop back up, and this time I used a diamond on the golden and orangey sections before. This time I'm going to use a triangle shape so that I don't have to draw it. So I'm going to deselect my magic wand and just come in here and put a triangle in here, and it's already in blue. Then select my shape tool, which gives me access to the 3 points that make up this shape. And I'm going to move one of them right up there. And I'm going to move this one right up in this corner. And I'll take this one and put it right here. And now that fits in that shape nicely. And I could even copy and paste that into the other corners and flip it, because they're really all the same size triangles. And just make them different colors if I want to. Okay, so that's the magic wand and the artwork tool. Now we also have a run stitch tool. So we can draw run stitches and right click and you've got it. But let me show you how this comes into play with the backdrop tool. We've opened up a new design here. Let's go pull up another backdrop. And this time I'm going to select quilting design. And we'll scroll down. Let's do Friendship Blossom. So I'm selecting that and click Open. It brings it up on my screen. I want to resize it before I start. So I'm going to come over here to my backdrop properties on the upper right-hand side and change my width or height, either one, and we'll do this 6.75 inches, which is a scale of 202 0.7% and apply. Now you can see again, this is pixelated. You see the jagged edges around that. What I want to do is select my run stitch tool, and then that turns on my magic wand because it knows there's a backdrop here. And I'm going to bring my wand down and click on any part of this black. And it will create a run stitch outline around this, which if we dismiss our picture backdrop over here on the right or left hand side, it did exactly what it should do. It created an outline. Now, that's not really what we want to do. We wanted just a single run stitch that we could use for a quilt design. So let's undo that and bring our backdrop back up. This time, with my magic wand still selected, I'm going to hold down the Shift key. Do you see here when it's blue right now? When I shift, it changes to red. Think red wand, red work. Now when I click, it's just going to do a single line through all of that. And we'll dismiss the backdrop, and there you go. And that is a run stitch. If we look at it in 3D, we can actually kind of see where the needle drops are. If I want to change any of those lines or straighten them up, all I have to do is click on my shape tool, and it will show me all the different nodes, and I can adjust them if I want, or I can leave them alone and change this from a regular run stitch. I can come over here on the top right hand side to my properties and make it a 2-ply stitch or a bean stitch. Now remember, bean is like a triple straight stitch, only you can go triple, quintuple, 7 times or 9 times. I don't know what the word for those are. So if you really want to build it up and make it stand out more, you know, do 7 repeats on that, and it's going to look like, you know, 6 strands of DMC floss, because that needle is going back in that hole and pulling 7 strands of, you know, 40 weight embroidered floss or whatever kind of thread you're using over that, and it will look just like DMC floss. So if you really want it to stand out, that's a good way to do it. Another option you have, because once you have it in a run stitch, you can convert it to all sorts of things, is a motif stitch, and we could select from any of these motifs. So if you want to do something kind of different and funky, you can do that. And that is a very prickly leaf. And up here at the top, you can change your pattern length if you don't like the way that looks. Let's make it a lot smaller. We'll make it 3 millimeters in our properties box up here on the right-hand side, and apply, and we'll get a little different look then. Oh, and I kind of like that. So just depends on the look that you want. You can even convert it to crazy quilting stitches and pick any of the crazy quilting stitches to do that with, which works the same way as a motif stitch would. It would just convert it to one of these designs. Okay, so any questions so far on backdrops?
Well, we do have one question from our little friend, Deborah. She wants to know, can you use any of those quilting stitches that you just showed? Can you separate them and use them as a single design?
Oh, yeah, you sure could. And the way you would do that is come up to select them and pick a design. Let's do, I like this one, stitch 36. I think it looks like a fishbone kind of thing. To do it as a single design, you just click and drag. And you can make it really about as large as you want to, because it will recalculate the stitch drops on there, the length of each stitch. So if it's great big like this one, which is 4 inches, but you need your 5x7. Well, actually, it wouldn't fit in your 5x7 hoop. It's a little too long. But you'd need a big hoop for that. But you can see, if we look at our needle points, does that know that's our commands? No, it's not. Let's see. Will it show me if I'm out of 3D? No, it won't do that in here. Oh, there we go. I'm just too far out. It shows me where the needle drops on those little holes. The little circles are where your needle drops. So that's still kind of big, but it will recalculate them for you. Or you can make it small.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's Quilt Embellisher. In Quilt Embellisher, the only things that you can create from scratch are run stitches and artwork, but if you can get them to one of those, then you can convert them to any of these stitches along here, okay? So just remember that. We may have to start with a solid, object, and we can also turn these things into artwork. Convert them back to, change them into artwork if we didn't do it originally. So if you pull up something with stitches, play with that. If you've got an outline, well, I'll show you that in a minute when we talk about artwork. Okay, now I'm going to pull up my block piecer, and let's see what the backdrop capabilities there are. They are very similar, in fact, almost identical to what you have in my quilt planner. I have a run stitch I can digitize from scratch. So I could bring up that same backdrop that we just did. Where's it? Friendship Blossom, or the leaves here, or do the leaves. Okay. Bring that up. Resize it if I need to. Click on my magic wand. Click on my run stitch, my magic wand, and hold the shift key down to make it red. And I can do red work. Or I could outline it. Let's dismiss the backdrop, and there I've got my run stitches. Okay. Now, with that one, I can't convert it to all of the other things because I don't have the crazy quilting stitches on here or the motif stitches, but I can certainly do a 2-ply of bean stitch or cut work. Cut work is, if I converted it to cut work, it would use the boring needles or cut work needles that you can buy for most machines. You can buy them for it. There's 4 different positions of those needles, so instead of stitching this, you don't use thread, it would actually cut through it. So you can create your own cut work designs in the software. So I can create a run stitch. I can also, let's bring up and we'll do a new page. Okay. I can also bring up that same design that we had before and create artwork pieces out of that, just like with this courthouse steps or this crazy quilt. I could open that. I would resize it. Now notice this one's got white space just on the top and bottom. So when I resize that, I would want to right-click and say define the scale, and let's make sure that this is correct from here to here. And it says that's almost 8 inches, so we'll leave it at that and play like that's the size we want, or we could change it. So on here, I can also select my artwork, select to have it filled, click on the magic wand. Now, whether you fill it or not is really entirely up to you. I just find it easier to see if I have those shapes filled in. So I'll select my yellow down here by right-clicking on it. Click on the yellow in the center. Then I'll switch to the orange, and looks to me like that one's orange, that one's orange, that one's orange, that one's orange. At least we're going to make it that way. Pick up the brown. Let's do these sides. And now it looks like we have to really add a burnt orange, or we can certainly change the color right here. Goldenrod, is that burnt orange enough for you? Autumn gold, there you go. And then I will just click on these other pieces. And that looks a lot like that other color. Is that Oh, it is. So we'll change that color to a darker brown. And, oops. Okay, let me look at my, excuse me, my sequence view. And I'm going to pick those two right there and then right click to change them to that darker brown. And there you go. So we just created that block in Artwork. After doing that, of course, because I'm in my block piecer, I can select it and take it to my workflow tool or to my cutter. Oh, and it looks like I've missed 2 spots there. So let's close that. I did. We'll select our black again or our dark brown, click on our artwork and our magic wand, and click and click. Now, if I dismiss my backdrop, yes, I've got all the pieces now. If I hadn't before, it would look like that when I dismiss my backdrop, and that's how you know that everything is in there. So let's redo what we just undid. Okay, now when I select the entire block and take it to my workflow dialog box, I can do all of that in the hoop. Okay, so that's one way to work with artwork in my block piecer. Another way to work with artwork in my block piecer is for cutting. I love the cutting feature of my block piecer. I can take this block right here, select it, take it to my cutter tool, and it divides it by color into different frames that I could then print out templates for or send them to a cutting machine. So I could actually save them in a format down here at the bottom for a plotter file, for a AutoCAD, a DXF, for an SVG, which a lot of the cutters use, like Silhouette and Artistic, and Sizzix, I think, uses that, or a Brother FCM file for the Brother Scan and Cut, which just make my life really easy if that's what, if that's how I want to cut my fabrics. Okay. Another way to use this is not with something you're necessarily going to piece in the hoop. Let's pull up a different backdrop. Oh, this one's kind of fun. I saved this picture because I thought that would look, that untied bow tie would look adorable on a baby onesie. Wouldn't that be cute? And it's really a pretty crisp and clear picture. So let's select our artwork. I'll just use the blue color. I've got my magic wand. I'm just going to click and click. Now, if I wanted to do this as a hand applique, which I don't, but if I did, I could select those 2 pieces, take them to my cutter, and tell it to give me a seam allowance of 1/8 of an inch, 0.1, we'll just do 0.125, and apply. Now it's given me that really small seam allowance or extra fabric on there to do needle turn applique, if I wanted to do that. I don't generally do handwork. I've done it before, and I'm ready to move on. If I want to do a regular applique and want it cut out, I could again take it to my cutter and say, I don't want any repeats on it. I mean, any seam allowance, but I want, I don't know, 7 repeats. Apply. And so now it gives me 7 of each piece on 2 different frames, and I could reorganize that if I want to. On my Silhouette 12 by 24 mat, put a mat through there, and I've got enough bow ties for 7 onesies. Okay. So my block piecer has a great ability to cut by adding seam allowances and knot, and that is a unique feature of my block piecer, and that you can send it directly to a file for your cutter. Now, with other ones, which we'll talk about in a minute, and getting them to the cutter, you can do it, you can export artwork. but we're still on backdrops. So we'll come back to that. And finally, I'm going to bring up my quilt planner. Now, the only artwork and backdrops that we have in Quilt Planner, you notice we don't have an artwork icon up here. We do have a backdrop. So you could bring up a backdrop image, let's say, of a whole quilt, and keep that in the background. This is, we'll make it 24 inches. Actually, I've got a little bit of white space there, so you know what? I'm going to come over and right-click and define my scale and say from this intersection right here to this one right there, that is actually 24 inches. And click OK. Now, this is much larger because we're dealing with a larger quilt. I mean, this would be a wall hanging, but you could do a whole quilt on this. We don't have any limitation to the size of our screen. We're just limited by our hoop size. But we can decorate something really large, and then it will break it up into pieces for us. And we'll talk about that more. I think it's next month, isn't it, Dory, that we're doing Quilt Planner? Let me know.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Okay, so come back next month and we'll go over this in more detail. But then when I create my quilt, I can say this is 24 inches by 24. And so my blocks are 6 inches. And I have no sashing. So my sashing size is 0. And pick my color here. There we go. And fill all of these in if I was going to do them all the same color or the same design. And then I've got my backdrop underneath, so when I fill this in with the design, like, oh, I don't know, let's do, well, let's do a grid. I'll just do this one. Okay, I'm going to make that fit in this cell right here. So it's all over the quilt. Now I can dismiss my grid and I can see what my quilting is going to look like on that quilt. So having a backdrop can be very, very helpful. The only way you can manipulate a backdrop is to change its orientation, meaning making it square, you know, horizontal, straighten it up, or changing the size of it. That's the only properties of a backdrop that you can change. Well, I take that back. There's a third one, how dark or light it is in the display. So that's backdrops in all 3 programs. Questions?
Well, yes, I do have a couple questions here.
Okay.
I have one from Denise. She asks what stabilizer you use when you're doing any of these quilting projects. Is it a tearaway or is it a cutaway?
Well, when I'm actually doing the quilting and I have batting and backing, I don't use any stabilizer because it's stable enough. Unless I was doing like a filled design, if I wanted to put, you know, Lulu's Christmas in here that's all filled, or puppy toes or something like that, then I would stabilize the fabric for the design and stitch it on the fabric first before I quilt it, because I don't want to see the back of that design on the back of my quilt.
That is correct. Yep.
All right. If I am piecing in the hoop, then I like to use a wash away tear away. We have one called Piece and Stitch, which that I really like because it's strong, but I leave it in through the whole thing. So I'm going to piece all my blocks. I'm going to put my blocks together. I'm going to put the quilting on there with batting and backing. And then the first time that quilt gets washed, that stabilizer disintegrates. I'm not going to say it dissolves because you still have fibers left, but they're no longer attached to each other. There are fibers under the stitches to support them, but the rest of it, you're left with that fiber between your quilt top and your batting, and you don't even know it's there. It's like a layer of soap scum kind of, although you don't know it's there. It doesn't add any bulk to the quilt. It doesn't bunch up or anything. It's just a little fiber left in there, which is fine. And that's what I prefer for piecing. A cutaway is a little too heavy. Poly mesh or no-show mesh, I don't think you get very nice creases with that, and it stays in forever. So just depending on what you're doing would be how you stabilize it. Good question.
Super. Okay, and here's another nice question from Kathy. Kathy wants to know, can you print any of the patterns that you were doing for earlier on plain paper if you don't have a cutter? Is there a way to do that?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. And that's where, like with the pieces for a block, I assume is what she's talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in my piecer, and let's go back to like a quilt block here. Oop, design 3. Okay. So if I wanted to print out templates for this, I would still go to my cutting tool. Only this time, instead of a mat that fits on a cutter, I'm going to pick paper right here. And, 8.5 by 11. And you notice it adds the default 1/4 inch seam allowance on that. And so I will print that out and use that to cut my pieces. And when it actually prints, the only thing that prints is the outline here and the number. So you know which patch it is that you're printing, okay, or that you're making templates for. Then when I go to cut that, I'll layer that, if I'm doing 4 repeats of this block, then I'm going to put 4 layers of fabric together and get my rotary cutter and ruler and cut around that piece. You can even use, which I do like to do, the print and stick target paper. So it's sticky, but you can run it through the printer, then cut these shapes out, peel them off, and stick them down to your fabric so they're not going to shift when you're cutting around them. And then just peel it off before you sew them together. It doesn't disintegrate in water.
Ah, very good.
Okay, so we ready for artwork now?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back to my Quilt Embellisher, the first one we used a while ago. I'm going to open up a new page. Now, artwork is a little different. I can't just open artwork. I have to import it. So artwork comes in a couple of ways. First of all of the blocks in your catalog, these are all artwork. If I click on one of them, resize it, when it comes onto my screen, let's put the grid up so you can see the difference. See, it's on top of my grid, and I can actually pick up these individual pieces and move them. Okay, so these are actually needle turn. This is the block that I learned needle turn applique on, which is why I don't do it anymore. But if I wanted to get these out of the way so I could decorate, I could, or I could leave those up there. And it's real artwork. And because we're in Quilt Embellisher, when I have artwork, I could select all of those green pieces by just coming over here to my sequence view and convert them to an applique. So we'll let the machine do it. And of course it defaults to a satin stitch applique. If I want to make that an E-stitch, I could do that, and we'll change the inset to 95. And that's all in the applique lesson. If you've missed anything with it, go back to that one and you can see how that's all done. And now I have blanket stitch appliques on there. I could even audition fabric in them if I want to, because of course we have that huge fabric library in my Quilt Embellisher and my block piecer. So it takes it a second to come up the first time you open it in a session because it is so huge. It's kind of like getting into your stash, some of us. Okay, come on, library.
Well,
there we go.
Okay, I was going to say,
Okay.
all these designs are artwork,
Uh-huh.
and they're not stitches, so you can't just stitch
Right.
those out, correct?
Correct, correct. Yeah, it's artwork. You have to convert it to stitches. It's not stitches to begin with. And that's an ugly green to use on that fabric. So what we do in Quilt Embellisher, if I want to bring up an artwork block, then I can convert that artwork to any of these stitches up here, okay? Whether it's texture, all of that. I can't do that with a backdrop. This is a real item, so I can convert it, okay? If I wanted to just audition designs on top of it, I'd bring it up as a backdrop. So I could see what designs would look good on that particular block. But in this case, if it's a block, I could take and select all of these blue pieces and change them to stipple if I want. And maybe we want it to be the piano. Apply. And to get rid of the lines in between, we'll click my favorite, the combine tool. And there you go. So it'll just stipple over those. Of course, the artwork, when you bring it in, you're going to want to make it the right size for your quilt block. Otherwise, your stitches aren't going to fit on there. But it's very easy to do. So that's one way. In your quilt catalog right here that you have with both Quilt Embellisher and Block Piecer, all of these come in as artwork. Okay, it's an actual thing that you can convert to a design in Block Piecer or to stitches in Quilt Embellisher. Stitches or applique or whatever you want to make it. All right, now let's pick a different block and no, this time, new page. This time I'm going to import artwork. So maybe I've got artwork from another program that I want to pull in that's good artwork. Like these are actually vector images, and you can get them from different places. I get a lot of mine from EQ7. So if it's a block I'm not familiar with, or if I make one, you know, I can make it in here, I can make it in different programs, I can import it to here. So here is, well, let's do this bloom file. So I'm going to open that, and it's an EMF, which is an enhanced meta file. And I know from certain programs like EQ7 and other quilting programs, you can export artwork or you can save it as a JPEG. So the difference would be, or save it as an image, the difference would be if it's artwork, I can tap it and manipulate it. If it's a JPEG, then it's just going to be under my screen for me to use as reference to decorate, okay, or create artwork from. So in this case, I am importing this bloom file that's an EMF. Now the first thing you want to do when you import a file, because it doesn't ask you for a size like our block catalog does, this comes in its own size. So select it like this one is, come over to your properties box, click on transform, and well, now this block would be big enough for a king-size bed. It's 107 by 108 inches, which is way too big for us to piece in the hoop, at least with any of my hoops. So I'm just going to change the size. Because it is vector artwork, it retains its integrity. So if I switch this to a 7-inch block, which is 6% of its original size, and click apply, and then center origin to bring it back up in full screen, it has lost none of its integrity. It's still perfect. It's not, you know, all ugly and pixelated. You can even see when you scroll in, it's not pixelated at all. So when you click on it, you can select the different pieces of it, okay? So it's actually a thing, and it sits on top of your grid. So now with this one too, I could take and over here in your sequence view, I have all of this as artwork. I could take the green color and convert that to stitches. Maybe I want to do, Ooh, contour there. Let's contour those. I'm going to get rid of my grid so I don't see all that backdrop. I kind of like that. And then I'll take the gray, light gray blocks or patches, sorry, and we'll make those into shape echo. I'm going to do, this really is my favorite thing to do, a circle. Now that's really busy, although it's kind of a cool look around the point there. So here's what I'm going to do to make it look a little nicer. I'm going to combine those pieces so it looks like one. Let's look at it in 3D so it's a little bit easier to see. And then I'm going to select it with my shape tool. And you see my dot right here in the middle? That's the center of my circle. I'm going to move it up here. And right click. And now I have a circle going around. If I had 4 of these going together, I think that'd be kind of cool looking. What do you think, Dory?
Ooh, there.
Maybe she doesn't like it.
No. I like that. I really do. I could see me doing that. Can we?
I'll make it for you.
Oh,
yes. Question.
Yes, I do. I have one. And this is a repeat. Understand that this is a repeat. Mm-hmm. Again, verbalize for us how to get a design to be artwork rather than backdrop.
Okay. Let's do that right now. I'm going to open up a new page. Let's bring up a backdrop. And let's select, let's do this crazy quilting here. It's a JPEG. I'm going to open it. And it's an 8-inch block. That's fine. I'm just going to change colors as I click, and I'm not going to try and match this just for time's sake. I'm going to click on my blue color. Oops, sorry. Right click. I've got blue selected. Come up here to my artwork and my magic wand. When you are using your magic wand, you don't have to pick a shape from your artwork. It really doesn't matter. It's going to follow the shape that is on the backdrop. Then I click, and it puts it in there. I'm going to change color, click again. And it puts a color in there for me. See, if I dismiss my backdrop, you can see it created these 2 patches for me already. I would just keep changing my color, clicking to create this whole block. You can do it with your magic wand or you can draw it, either one. Now at this point, if I wanted to export this artwork, I can do that. I can say export artwork, and then let's say I don't have my block piecer. I can export artwork into the name I want, if I could spell. Just crazy. And I can select from any of these formats. So if I want to cut these out with my silhouette or my brother scan and cut or the artistic or whatever cutter you've got, or if you just want to make it artwork so you can take it into another program, you've got all of these different options. And you just select that and save. Now, it doesn't create automatically the seam allowance for you. So you would have to do that in your the graphics program that you have that goes with your cutter if you want to do that. Or you could print them out and save it as, or print them out and then cut, you know, a 1/4 inch round them if you want to cut them out. Does that answer the question?
That certainly does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now, real quick, we've just got, well, we really don't have any time left, but I do want to show you very quickly. In my block piecer, you have the same capabilities except you've got that cutter file here. So if you wanted to import, let's do file, import artwork, and you can export artwork. I would, let's do, we can do the same file as we did before. So we'll bring that one in. Of course, we need to resize it because it was huge. And now I can do the same thing. Now you notice that center origin works on artwork, but not on a backdrop because there's something actually on top of the design board to center in the middle. So that's why it works and the backdrop doesn't. So now I can take this now to my workflow tool to create a design to stitch it, or to my cutter to cut it. And one other thing real quick, if you just want to send certain parts of it to your cutter, like these what are they? They're a polygon. These polygons and this diamond, you can just have those go to your cutter if you want, and not send both of them, both colors. If you want to just do the other ones, you know, as a stitch and flip kind of thing, like piecing, and do these more accurately because you have less fabric, it will work that way as well. Okay, so this was just kind of an overview to give you an idea that there's two different things. One is a backdrop and one is artwork that exist in these programs. And we are going to go into more depth in future webinars with each one of them individually. So come back, play with it, get familiar with it, and we'll get into it more. Any questions before you hang up on me, Dory?
No, that's about it. You did a terrific job. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll see ya in the community. Y'all go check it out tomorrow. I'm going to. Thank you.
Bye-bye.